North Smithfield Planning Board meeting for Thursday, January 23rd is called to order at 7:01 p.m. We'll start with a roll call. Dr. Benoit?
Here.
Ms. Amendola?
Here.
Mr. Menard?
Here.
Ms. Ramos?
Here.
The chair is here. Mr. Porter and Dr. Roberts are absent. Give you a few moments to look at review the meetings from the January 9th meeting. Bring up any comments or questions. We're good? We're good?
Motion to approve the January 9th meeting minutes?
We have a motion to approve the meetings as presented. Have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. The meeting minutes are approved as presented. Any planning board members need to disclose any potential conflicts on the matters before the board this evening?
No.
Hearing none. Do any planning board members need to disclose any ex parte communications about any contested or material adjudicatory facts or opinions concerning the merits of any application before the board this evening?
No.
In that case, our voting members this evening are the five of us, Dr. Benoit, Ms. Amendola, Ms. Menard, Ms. Ramos, and myself. And we will move from there into our first project. Item 7, the public hearing, Unified Development Review, Canton East Holdings LLC. And Mr. Carrillo, if you could give us an introduction.
Mr. Chairman, this is a project that was before the Planning Board maybe 6 months ago for a pre-application conference. It is a property located at 32280 Dowling Highway. It is an old church property, I believe, that is being transacted. The proposal is to subdivide the property into two lots. One would have a gas station with convenience store and a drive-through window, and the second half of the development would be an automated car wash. This project is a unified development review, which means that the planning board will be acting both as the zoning board and planning board. The first actions will be with regard to zoning for some minor dimensional relief and a special use. Is there a special use permit required for this? I believe there is no longer a special use permit. Is that correct? For this project, and then you'll be acting, yes, there is a special use permit for the groundwater supply protection overlay. I apologize. And then the planning board will be acting separately as the planning board for the development plan review. The zoning relief will be contingent upon the approval of the development plan review, and if the zoning relief is not issued, you will not proceed with the development plan review.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Joseph Brennan, attorney on behalf of the applicant, Canton East Holdings, LLC. As stated, the project is located at 322 Eddie Dowling Highway, Assessors Plat 13, Lot 70. Zoning district is currently the business highway, and the total land area is 5.48 acres. What the applicant is looking to do is to subdivide the property into two. You have proposed Lot A, which would be a proposed car wash, and proposed Lot B, which would be a gas station with drive-through. Originally, the plan was flipped, where the gas station was on, if you're looking at the plan, on the left side or the north side. And we heard comments from planning at the pre-app stage. We came back to the drawing board and we reflipped that plan around. So you'll see that as part of the application. At the gas station is now on the south side or the right-hand side of the plan, and the car wash is on the north side, the left-hand side of the plan. The proposed Lot A on the north side would have about 3.40 acres of land, and the proposed Lot B would have 2.08 acres of land. And because of the extreme large amount of street frontage that we have no issue with zoning compliance from lot size and frontages from that perspective. With that, we've got a bunch of experts here who are much smarter than I at any of these kind of things. And so first, I'd like to bring up Ed Pimentel, our planning expert. And if we could have him sworn in, and if the board would accept him also as a planning expert.
We don't,
We don't normally swear in experts, Joe, but Ed's been here multiple times as a planning expert, and his reports have been accepted as part of the record.
I think the concern more is because you're gonna be granting zoning.
Of the zoning?
Yeah, you get
If
sworn
you'd
in.
like him to swear him, Mr. Chairman, I can swear him.
please do.
Raise your right
Don't
hand.
swear at him.
Well, that'll be after the meeting. State your name, please.
Edward Pimentel, that's P as in Paul, I-M-E-N-T-E-L.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. Go ahead. So for the board's perspective, and I know you read the materials that are presented to you, it was rather a verbose report, but, so I take the global view of a project, right? We look at the comprehensive plan, what are the goals and objectives for the community? The comprehensive plan then details through the various regulatory documents, like your zoning regulations, subdivision regulations, how you want individual properties to be developed. The comprehensive plan was like a tell-all of how you wanted these properties to be developed. So it was easy from my perspective to come to a conclusion and a determination of consistency. First of all, there are actually literally properties that have been excerpted out of the Route 146 and 146A thoroughfare and integrated into a comprehensive plan, and it was specifically for the purposes of making sure they were GB district oriented. And the GB district is for the express purpose of establishments that depend primarily on a great volume of vehicular traffic, and typically uses which accommodate services to motorists. I mean, it's what's expected here. Car washes, gas stations, drive-through facilities. This is where you want them. Your comprehensive plan makes it clear that you have limited land that's zoned commercial and industrial. You have a heavy reliance on a residential tax base, and you really want to the extent possible, develop to the fullest extent your commercial and industrial resources. In fact, it talks about redevelopment mostly because there's very little new development of land resources available. With all due respect to the church was there, it is not a tax-generating entity, and now this will be a tax-generating entity. There is concern in your comprehensive plan that there's an imbalance between the heavy reliance on residential and otherwise. It further notes that you want to see the heavily laden uses put on 146 and 146A. And the other thing is, it also talks about trying to accommodate multiple uses and to curb all the points of ingress and egress in these curb cuts onto, because it is a major thoroughfare. And that's the intent here. So the intent here, yes, it will be subdivided as two entities, but in fact, it will operate and be integrated as a single entity with multiple uses. You enter into one property, you've got a variety of uses. You've got a drive-through facility, you've got a convenience store, gas station, car wash. And this is the way development should be done. To that end, there's a fine thread that runs through all these approvals. One of them is the comprehensive plan consistency, and the other one is making sure that the development is integrated into the neighborhood with surrounding land uses. It's another reason, in addition to what this board had asked us to do, was we redesigned it so that because we know what the surrounding land uses are too, and that is the vehicular movements, vegetation, buffering, all those things have been taken into consideration to make sure that this development works in conjunction with the residential component and in all the other land uses. The new Rhode Island general law is that special use permits now are pursuant to specific and objective criteria. Your special use, the reason why we need the special use permit is because we are in the district, and for the automotive, fuel, and gas stations, and as your director says, the overlay. I will have the project engineer probably more so address these, because these specific and objective criteria are more design requirements, ingress points, off-street parking, things that are very site-specific and engineering related. What I can say, though, is when it comes from the perspective of comprehensive plan consistency, I feel confident in stating, in my humble opinion, that we are consistent, and number two, that we will be compatible with this neighborhood based on the design. And as the director stated, the precedence of approvals will be special use permit, then followed by dimensional relief. The variances are very minor, very, very minor, and it's for the purposes of making sure that we actually had an appropriate design. Proper off-street parking, off-street loading, trash storage, and even in that regard, we exceeded the impervious coverage by less than 2%. So it's special use dimensional, and then the granting of the major land development project. And if the board has any questions.
Why don't you continue the presentation? Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I would call up Brian Thaumann from Dupree Engineering, professional engineer. And again, I'd ask that for the purposes of the Unified Development Review that we have him sworn in, and that the board also accept him as an expert.
Name, please.
Brian P. Thalman, Thalmann.
Mr. Thalman, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Brian has been before this board on a couple of occasions and has been considered an expert witness, an expert in his field of engineering.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, as has been alluded to, we have this mixed-use development on 322 Eddie Dowling Highway, and as everybody's kind of alluded to before me, is two uses, a gas station on the south parcel and a car wash on the north parcel. As far as our regulatory steps through the various entities within the state, we have DEM from both a wetlands perspective and RIPD's stormwater perspective. We have the city of Woonsocket for water, we have the town of North Smithfield for sewer, and then we have the Rhode Island Department of Transportation for the curb cut onto Eddie Dowling Highway. With the exception of DOT, which has taken a little bit of time, and kind of the rationale for that is likely everything that's going on with DOT at the moment, it's taken a little bit of time, but we've secured everything else as far as the regulatory approvals. And the feedback that we've gotten from DOT, and I'll let Derek from PAR kind of allude to that, is it's just taking time to get through the process. But the big hurdle was DEM not having any kind of issues, and that permit has been issued. As far as drainage, we are dealing with a closed drainage system with the two lots ultimately discharging to a detention system on the northeast corner of the property. With respect to the gas station, because there are a little bit more stricter rules with respect to how stormwater is treated, what we are doing is there will be an oil water separator that discharges to what is called a focal point treatment unit. A focal point treatment unit is one of about two technologies that the department accepts when it comes to managing stormwater from gas station type of operations. The focal point, from what we've seen and experienced, is the best technology, especially where there are concerns related to groundwater in aquifers. So we are incorporating that focal point treatment, and it is a manufactured mixed media type of system. It's a sand filter that essentially really likes anything that may potentially be petroleum hydrocarbons. We've kind of designed a tertiary system, if you will. We have the oil water separator, which will serve as the primary treatment for the water. The calculations we did indicated we probably only needed a 500-gallon oil water separator. In an effort to be responsible and cognizant of the environment that we're in, we've upsized it to 1,000 gallons and double the capacity of it. That then will discharge to the focal point unit. The focal point unit will handle all of the events from 1.2 inches of rain and down, which what we've looked at over the last few years probably represents 95% of the rainfall events that we typically see in Rhode Island now. I know in the last year we've had a couple events that have exceeded it, but their duration has been longer than the 24-hour period that we've looked at for respect to the water quality. Once it gets through the focal point unit, it will then discharge to the detention basin. So we'll have primary, secondary, and tertiary treatment for the stormwater associated with the gas station, and then the car wash, because all of that rainfall or all of that wash water is contained within and then is through a treatment facility that ultimately discharges into the sewer system. So any of the runoff, go ahead.
No, just a question. What happens when we do have like a 2-inch event
The system will still function, but there is a bit of a bypass in an out and control structure that will route where that 2-hour period that typically occurs at the height of the storm, where things are we need to manage the volume more than we need to manage the quality.
Well, what happens with the water?
It still gets to the detention pond. It would bypass the focal point unit and go directly to the detention pond.
Okay, thank you.
So the stormwater associated with the car wash would then go to a sediment forebay. From the sediment forebay, it would be directed to the water quality treatment unit, which in this case will be a sand filter, and then the sand filter will then discharge to the detention basin. What I do want to allude to with respect to the car wash is the focal point is really only dealing with the water that is associated with the pavement. The roof runoff, which is clean, is able to bypass the focal point unit and go directly into the detention basin. Outside of that, there will be a central manhole around this point of the facility that discharges into the sewer. When we were here at pre-application, I had made reference to we were probably gonna look at some form of a pump station to kind of have to manage the flows. The research and working with the North Smithfield Sewer Department and Lou Ragazzino from your consultant is that we could actually make a gravity system work. So there is no need for pumps at this point. Everything will be fed by gravity, even though we are on kind of a uphill section of Eddie Dowling Highway, and then ultimately connects into a manhole that exists at the entrance of the Rockcliffe condominium development, which is kind of up here, and then that discharges into the pump station that's a little bit to the north. Woonsocket water will be extended from about the same point. They've asked that we carry it to the terminus of the property line on the southern point at a hydrant. And outside of working out some maintenance agreements, because it is considered not part of their system, they have no problem supplying the capacity that we've requested. We have provided a landscape plan, which was, I think, sheet 13 or so in the set. Yep. And again, being very cognizant of the community and having it be representative of the nice community that North Smithfield is, we've done a job of kind of really enhancing the landscaping where, you know, we recognize that some is gonna have to be removed as part of the construction process, but where we can supplement it. The other thing that I wanted to interject and came out of the pre-application meeting is there was some discussion related to a granite bench that exists kind of in this area here.
Mm-hmm.
With the expanse of what we need to do to accomplish the circulation pattern and whatnot, what Mr. Grilly from Canton East Holdings has kind of said is that if we need to move this to a location that you guys find comfortable, we don't have a problem doing that. I think even if it was in an area where it was accessible per se, the ability of people to get to it with kind of the expanse that we have to do, I think there may be a better spot in the community to preserve that.
Mm-hmm.
Derek Hugg from PAR is here to talk about traffic, and Brian Naring from PAR is here to talk about geotech. I can answer any of the more specific site civil questions that folks may have.
Yes, thank you. I noticed on the DEM letter, there's a couple corrections that they listed. Were those adjusted in the plans?
Yes.
Okay.
Anybody else?
I'm confused. You guys flip right to left, left to right.
Yes.
I don't operate on an electronic device. I was handed these paper plans which show the opposite of what you presented to me. It makes it rather difficult for me to review what you're presenting.
So the plans that we presented
Yes?
are what came about from your comment. You were the one that had actually,
Apologize.
yeah.
We're okay. We're okay on that. I found it. However, I have a lot of questions.
Okay.
Going back to your very first presentation. you talked about considerable amount of ledge
Mm-hmm.
in the northwest area. Is some blasting gonna have to take place?
Yes, but we've got Brian Nearing from Par Engineering, who did the geotech report with us tonight, and he is far more,
Blasting seems to cause fractures in the subsurface ledge, and water flows through these fractures? Yes, okay. And the gradient, as I understand it, is from southwest to
northwest to
northwest
southeast.
to southeast. And so it's a downhill slope
Mm-hmm.
in that direction. So my overwhelming concern is the fact that the material states that it's a sensitive area because of Reservoir 3, Woonsocket Reservoir number 3
3 and 4.
and 4, and Brookfall Brook.
Mm-hmm.
Your narrative states that it served the city of Woonsocket. To your knowledge, does that water serve any other towns?
I believe it does, yes.
Yes. Could that town be North Smithfield?
Yes.
Okay. So in the event of a catastrophic failure, no matter how well it's been designed, Woonsocket and North Smithfield would be hurting as severely as the LA fire did. Do you agree it would be cataclysmic? Thank you. So with that in mind, I'm going to ask, I know that the underground storage tanks are designed and approved by DEM. We've heard that over and over. However, are there possibly storage systems that could be above ground?
No.
There are no such systems available.
Not for the magnitude that would need to be required.
Okay. What I'm getting at is, an underground tank, if it should spring a leak, I know you've got all kinds of bells and whistles that will alarm everybody.
Mm-hmm.
However, to mitigate the spill underground, it takes several days to get heavy equipment in. Is that fair to say?
No, I think it could, I think it would, I mean, there are emergency, I mean, Mr. Zofsky's here, and he,
But the point I'm making is, if it were above ground, it would be visible, and even the odor would be recognizable by a number of people, and action could be taken more immediately.
I would be concerned about the flammability of gas above ground.
Okay, but I believe many large fuel storage areas have massive above-ground tanks, and they never saw fit to put those underground.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my concern. My concern is that if anything ever leaks, you're going right directly into our water supply, North Smithfield and Woonsocket. So you're gonna have to twist my arm very strongly to get a positive from me.
I think that there is, aside from the dual wall tank system, there are other methods that can be used to protect the tanks in this type of instance where there are underlying environmental concerns. And those specifically are and I agree, you were one of the ones that suggested moving the gas station to the southern portion of the site. That excavation that would house the tanks can now be lined with an impermeable liner that serves as a secondary containment.
Have you designed it that way?
We don't design the containment system for the tanks. That's actually done by the tank manufacturer. But if it were made a condition of the approval process, it could be clearly incorporated into the design. But I think underground, that provides us a secondary level of containment that above ground couldn't provide.
Okay, you're starting to win me over. But that would be a condition before you get my vote.
I fully, you know, Dr. Benoit, you've been a member of this community for many years. You've been a member of this board for many years. And, you know, I applaud you for the level at which you review submissions that come before you. But I think there are ways that we can engineer this system to protect the resource that you are concerned about.
We'll add the stipulation. We'll add the condition.
Sorry.
We're going to add the condition.
Yes,
The planner's got it.
terrific.
Anyone
And-
else?
Did you have any other concerns, Dr. Wright?
Please,
You said you had a lot of questions.
I'm good for the moment.
Okay. All right. Anyone else?
Before we move on to the next expert, just while I have Brian up here, I'm just going to go through, because I think that he's the expert who can answer the questions the best for us, even though they're all speaking to it. So I would ask that all testimony be brought into consideration for the criteria for the dimensional variance and the special use permit. And so I apologize where I'm a little bit reading verbatim from your ordinances, but just for the record and for clarity. So Brian, the first question is that the hardship for the dimensional variance says from which the applicant seeks relief is the unique characteristics of the subject land or structure and not to the general characteristics of the surrounding area, and is not due to a physical or economic disability of the applicant, excepting those physical disabilities addressed in Rhode Island general laws.
So the dimensional variance we need essentially relates to the retaining wall that would be constructed both on the southwesterly side, the southerly side, and then the easterly side of where the gas station is gonna be. We, to be very conservative, went through your zoning ordinance, and a wall is described as a structure. So that was the impetus for requesting the dimensional relief for what it is. And essentially, to make circulation work for this, to incorporate tanker trucks which have to come in and out, and being cognizant of keeping vehicle conflicts to a minimum, really necessitated that this wall be extended to where it is. In a perfect world, we would have loved to have seen this property line kind of come to here, which would have given us a little bit more flexibility to kind of work within it, but the property was created the way it was, and now we're trying to make it work.
And building off of that, that hardship's not the result of any prior action of the applicant, as you explained.
Correct.
And the granting of the requested variance will not alter the general character of the surrounding area or impair the intent and purpose of the zoning ordinance or the comprehensive plan upon which the ordinance is based?
Yes, and I'll go to some of the testimony that Mr. Pimentel had provided, where the comprehensive plan makes specific references to the 146 corridor in trying to provide commercial services which enhance or supplement the residential uses that are in the area.
And finally, for the dimensional criteria, the hardship suffered by the owner, if not granted, would amount to more than a mere inconvenience, meaning that the relief sought is minimal to a reasonable enjoyment of the permitted use to which the property is proposed to be devoted?
Yes.
And, thank you. And then, so now for the special use permit standards, since the development is located within the Water Protection Overlay District, these are a little bit longer, so I apologize, but the ability to meet the standards contained in 250-RICR-150-05-3, Groundwater Quality Rules, Section 3.11, Groundwater Quality Standards and Preventative Action Limits pertaining to GAA and GA classified groundwater areas. We can meet those standards?
Yes.
And then, two, the ability to meet and follow all regulations as defined by the EPA and Rhode Island DEM related to hazardous waste and reporting as defined by industry and where applicable. Examples include but are not limited to the grave systems, emergency planning, reporting requirements, and DEM rules for hazardous waste management.
That is correct.
And we will not, during construction or thereafter, have any inverse environmental impact on any water body or course in the Water Supply Protection Overlay District.
We will not.
And additionally, because we'll agree to that condition
We would-
upon which the planning board member has that
A
requested.
secondary containment system for the underground storage tanks.
And then the ability to meet the standards contained in 250-RICR-150-15-3, active rules and amended for freshwater wetlands as defined by Rhode Island DEM, and we will not adversely affect an existing or potential water supply.
That is correct, and is evidenced by the department having issued a permit to this effect.
And then the provision of an acceptable soil erosion and sediment control plan designed and stamped by a licensed Rhode Island professional engineer.
A soil erosion plan, which was part of the RIPD submission that we made for this, was adopted and approved by the department.
And then all permitted and special use permits, this one will include a demonstration and use of best available control technology and industry best practices as outlined by either Rhode Island DEM, the Department of Health, the EPA, and where applicable.
Yes, we have.
And the location and description of any proposed facilities for refuge and storage disposal is
Yeah. So we have identified 2 locations for refuse and trash. For the car wash, it would be in kind of the southeast corner of that parcel. And then for the gas station, again, the southeast portion of that parcel. So each use would have its separate and distinct trash services.
And contaminants of concern shall be regulated as health standards become available by Rhode Island DEM and the EPA.
Absolutely.
And the ability to meet the standards contained in Rhode Island DEM stormwater management rules and guidance.
Yep. As I indicated earlier in my testimony, this was submitted to 2 separate divisions in the Water Resources Program. One was the Wetlands Program, the other one was the Stormwater Program. Stormwater reviews this for both stormwater, soil erosion and control, as well as requirements of the RIPDES program. And both entities within the department have issued permits.
And same, you mentioned RIPDES, but the ability to meet the standards contained in the regulations for the Rhode Island pollutant discharge elimination system.
Yes,
And then the ability to meet the standards contained in the air pollution control regulations.
yes,
And the ability to meet the standards in the oil pollution control regulations.
yes.
And the ability to meet the standards contained in the rules and regulations for underground storage facilities. All right, thank you. And at this time, we'll bring up,
Hang on,
Question,
go ahead.
oh, sure.
Chairman? Where's your snow storage?
So we have snow storage that can be accomplished here, and we have snow storage that could be accomplished along in here, and then down in here and in here.
Next question, who's paying for the extension of the sewer line and the water line?
The developer.
Thank you. And what's my last one? Oh, is the landscape plan stamped by Rhode Island landscape architect?
Yes, it is. Right there, Alex Avery.
I couldn't read it on the
Yep.
screen.
It's actually a woman. She's an employee of Deprete, but she is a registered landscape architect.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Anything else? Okay.
Thank you. And at this point now, I'll bring up Derek Hugg from PAR, who will discuss the traffic. Again, we'll ask him to be sworn in, and if he can be accepted as an expert.
State your name, please, Derek.
Derek Hugg, H-U-G.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And Derek's been before this board before and testified as an expert in traffic.
Thank you. I'll try to keep this relatively brief. We completed a traffic study for this development between January and April of 2024. The report stated April 2024. We looked at existing conditions and conducted both safety and capacity analysis, safety studies at and around the driveway location. As far as the safety analyses are concerned, we looked at sight distance from the driveway, and we also looked at crash history to see if there were any safety concerns at and near the driveway conditions. We conducted a spot speed study on Thursday, January 11th of last year for northbound vehicles on Eddie Dowling Highway, right at the access location. Because of the fact that there are signals on both sides relatively nearby, we found the 85th percentile speed to be 33 miles an hour, although the variation in those speeds is fairly significant, more significant than you usually find. So we based our calculations on 35 miles per hour. We found that the existing sight distance just barely meets minimum standards, but the reason it only meets minimum standards is because of the sign for the existing church, which is obviously going to go away. And so once that is removed and there's, brush removal and the lights, landscaping and site grading is complete, we anticipate the site distance will be well in excess of those minimum standards. We looked at crash data between the two Dowling Village signals for a 3-year period for 2021 through 2023. And to our surprise, we were told by the police department there was not a single crash in that zone. Again, it didn't include the signals. It was between the signals in that time period. So nothing at the church driveway, nothing at the condominium driveway or anything like that. In addition, we looked at capacity analyses for the site driveway itself. Obviously, it's a divided highway, Eddie Dowling. You can't take a left out. It's a right in, right out. No way around that. We conducted traffic counts at the existing church driveway on Thursday, January 11th, and on Saturday, January 13th last year. Then we took those volumes and projected them out 5 years to 2029 based on a 1% annual background growth rate, and added volumes from a proposed mixed-use development just north of Dowling Village at 82 to 88 Eddie Dowling Highway. We estimated trip generation. We did a trip generation analysis based on using ITE trip generation manual. They have a land use for the convenience store and a gas station, and they also have an automated car wash land use code. The automated land use code, I will note, is fairly new to ITE, and they don't have a ton of data in there yet. They don't have a trip generation for the morning peak hour, 7 to 9, although I imagine that's because a lot of these places are closed for 7 to 9, or even if they're open, I don't know about anybody else, but I've never had my car washed between 7 and 9 on a weekday, but I imagine it's not very busy. Based on that, the morning peak hour, we're anticipating 270 trips, of which the vast majority are pass-by trips. So we have new trips that are people who are going to either the gas station or the car wash as their primary destination. And we also have pass-by trips, so people who are going in to get gas or go to the convenience store and get a cup of coffee on their way to work or on their way home from work, or are going to get their car washed while they're also going to go into Dowling Village and go to Walmart and do their weekend shopping. For a gas station, most trips are pass-by trips. It's estimated it's roughly 75%. I'm sure that a lot of car wash trips are also pass-by trips. However, again, because this is a relatively new land use that ITE has gathered data for, they don't have enough data to estimate pass-by rates yet. So we assumed 0 pass-by trips for any of the car wash trips. So in the morning peak hour, 270 projected new trips, of which 202 are pass-by, not new to the area roadways. Afternoon peak hour, 306 new trips, with 170 being new to the area roadways. And on Saturday, peak hour, midday, 245 trips, with 152 being pass-by. We did capacity analyses using Synchro software, industry standard, under existing conditions, no build conditions, which is future conditions without the additional traffic from the development, and the 2029 build condition at the driveway location. Those results you can find on page 18, tables 5 through 7. And whether it's existing, no build or build, any of the time periods, all levels of service came out level of service B or better. It's right in, right out, generally is pretty, pretty easy, makes for pretty easy access. So in summary, we will have ample site distance once the development and the construction is complete. There's no crash history in the area. We have good levels of service, and therefore, we anticipate that the development can be accommodated safely. Any questions?
Dr. Bright?
Will it decrease the level of service?
Well, right now, there's nothing there. There's nothing there. The church is not in operation.
I see your point, but let's go the other way. Is the highway have sufficient capacity to carry what you're
Yes,
planning?
yes,
With room to spare, shall we say?
yes. As a level of service B, that's considered a good level of service.
Thank you.
I had a question for the study of the traffic and the new traffic and all that. How much was taken into consideration for people that are going to make a U-turn?
People,
Because people, yeah, people are on the, I'll call it the. Wendy's,
heading
the south side
southbound.
of-
Yeah,
They're gonna be making U-turns to come get it. They don't have, right? I don't think they have another way to get there. And they're
Correct.
certainly not gonna drive down the Greenville Road, go over to 146, and then come around through the new way.
no. I mean, my general assumption is that if you're heading to work and you're heading southbound, you have other gas station options that are on the southbound side.
Don't have another car wash.
Don't have another car wash. So, no, we
Right
didn't.
now, we don't have a gas station that has a convenience store. The Sunoco station doesn't have a convenience store.
Yeah.
So that traffic light at
At
Taco
the
Bell
Yeah, the southern Dowling
will
Village.
definitely see a significant increase, I think, of U-turns.
Yep. We didn't look at either of the signals.
It could happen in the other direction as well. If you're coming out of the gas station and you're forced northbound on
Right, you
Eddie
could-
Dowling and need to turn back, it would be that
Yeah.
light by
Although that
the CVS.
they have that issue today. If you're coming out of Taco Bell, they have
Oh,
to go.
sure.
yeah,
Oh,
But
sure.
right,
It's
it's
just a
increased.
matter of
It
if
is increased. Yeah,
increases
that's true.
traffic
Right,
Trying to access that
right.
car wash or
But I
convenience
know if the Jeep needs a bath and I'm at Park Square, I'm going up there and taking a
Right.
U-turn, so.
Are those no U-turn traffic lights?
No,
They're U-turn permitted in both?
I don't think they are because I've done it before.
Well, it's
But I always look for the sign.
I was gonna say, just because you
I
did it doesn't mean
always
it's
look
legal,
for the sign that says no U-turn, and I haven't, yeah, that's what I thought, yeah. They kind of have to be because of the way that road works.
Just to get to Taco Bell and.
Exactly, yeah, so, and, yeah, to support the business, it has to support it, so. What are your thoughts on that?
There are. It would be really, really very, very, very difficult for me to predict like how many might do that. Again, it's a very thickly settled area. There are, not necessarily right along this corridor, but further to the north, other options if you want to get your coffee. There's Dunkin' Donuts. There's, there are other donut shops and other, businesses that you can. This seems like if I'm on my way to work, that's really the last thing I really want to do is pull a UE at Taco
people-
Bell and
Okay, but
do that.
that's Monday through Friday.
Yeah.
In the morning, so there's all the rest of the time of the week.
Yep.
And there aren't any other options for car wash, except on South Main Street. I think there's a small one still. I mean, nobody's going there, so I'm just saying.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that the applicant is expecting the car wash to be a big draw because the fact that there isn't something else around.
Yep.
So I think you need to look at the impact that's going to have, which maybe increases the traffic as well. I mean, which of course is good if it increases your business traffic, but I'm saying if all you took into account was people heading north, then I think you missed some segment of well, I'll say opportunity, but therefore traffic flow.
Yeah, we just looked at the driveway. So obviously at the driveway, everybody's going northbound, right? So
Right,
it's right in, right out.
And the traffic light is only a few hundred feet away.
Correct, correct. So, I mean, we can take a look at the signal. The problem is, of course, it's very, very difficult to determine. I mean, it would be easy enough, basically, if we were to do counts at the Dowling Village, we can see how many people are coming into and out of Dowling Village, northbound and southbound, but even that doesn't really work, because you also have the northern signal at Dowling Village, and a lot of the people who are coming southbound are gonna take the left there if they're going into Dowling Village.
But it might be good to look at the activity around the light, that light in particular, including police reports and stuff, because people taking U-turns can create, it's a little more interesting
Yeah,
flow, you know? so-
little easier to
Right,
misjudge.
yeah, exactly, so. Anybody have anything else?
I think you can only turn
Miss-
left at that light if
Taco
an arrow
Bell.
points left. There's no real
Oh,
left.
no, I think you're right.
So you have no oncoming traffic
Right.
going north at that
Yeah.
light.
As
So if
long-
somebody did do a U-turn,
Well, it's when it's green.
you can't
yeah.
control.
You can't, yeah,
Right.
it's protected only. So there is, you'd never have oncoming traffic
Correct.
when you're allowed to
Oh,
take
it's a,
that
it's a
U-turn.
red,
Correct.
it's red when the other side is green.
Correct.
Okay, okay, good point.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Does
Doesn't
that,
stop somebody from doing it.
I had a green arrow,
Let's throw into that, right?
and there's
Get up
no
and
sign.
swear when I hear it.
yes, they potentially might.
Anybody
Yeah,
have
but obviously DOT's obviously looking at this as well.
Okay.
They may have a similar concern.
Okay. Anything else? Anyone? I think we're, if there's no one else to present,
No, just conclude.
it'll be time, yeah, if you could conclude, and then we'll open up the public hearing.
What about the blasting?
Pardon me?
What were you gonna hear about the blasting?
Oh, we can, we'll have
Yes,
you come up.
thank you. So I thought there was somebody.
Thank you. So now we'll introduce Brian Nering, also from PAR. If he could also then be sworn in and accepted as an expert before this board.
Raise your right hand, Brian. State your name, please.
Brian Neary?
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. So the question was specific to blasting. So typically, with a site like this where you got to remove ledge, we would, you do a pre-condition survey. You would have, follow standard protocols as far as, noise, dust, vibrations, anything like that. So the contractor requirements would be to meet those requirements. And in the case of, needing to do methods that would reduce, you're not going to want to do, blasting or heavy noises by residential. So you're going to use other methods to remove the rock. Sometimes you can get lucky, if it's fractured the right way, you can use excavators and some hammering to loosen the rock. Other times you can drill and actually inject, epoxy or some other compound that'll then expand the rock. Similar when they're quarrying for like granite slabs and stuff like that, they'll use those methods to be, more gentle with it. When we ran into in the logs, there are, natural fracture lines in the rock, and a lot of it is above the grade too. So if there, do you guys have any other specific questions about it?
Dr.
Will
Black?
you do some pre-blast surveys of any nearby foundations?
Yeah, so during the precondition survey, you would look at the adjacent construction, and blasting's come a long way. There are some very talented companies that can, they put exactly the minimum amount of explosives to just fracture the rock if they went a blasting direction, but they would be required to do a precondition survey of the adjacent.
Do you know the distance to the nearest foundation? Anyone, the engineer or anyone? I don't see anything very close as far as residential, except on the
Well, there's a few across the street, and then there's the condos.
rock.
Yeah, I think
Could become an issue.
one of the most important, I think the important thing is perception too. So it's, maybe that wouldn't actually get to the foundations, it wouldn't be an issue, but maybe, you would see your window vibrating a little bit from just the percussion of heavy equipment. So it's nice to inform people and, you know, have that preconditioned survey.
Yeah, I would think the ones across Eddie Dowling Highway are definitely within any type of zone. They're not that far away.
I think you, in the past, I've heard of baseline evaluation of nearby foundations, so somebody doesn't come back with a false claim that you
Right.
got their foundation.
Right, their painting fell off the wall. Yep.
I'd like
Yeah.
to try to avoid that scenario if possible.
Yeah, and typically we'll put out, whether it's, you know, the engineer or the contractor, whoever, we'll put out vibration monitoring, and you'll have live data where you're getting, you know, it's a seismograph, and it's recording the vibrations, so you're getting, you know, you have your baseline pre-construction, you know, with like trucks, your garbage truck
Right.
going by, and then, you know, they go in, say they're hammering, you know, and we know, you know, based on Army Corps, any of the standards, you can look at the vibration limits for, you know, whether it's a sensitive structure that's very old or a newer construction, and, you know, they have different tolerances. So you set those limits, and then when they are at the lower threshold, an alert goes off on the devices that are usually set up on site, and so that's the lower threshold. It says, hey, you gotta look at, you know, the methods that you're using, and to lower that vibration limit so you don't exceed the actual threshold.
Okay.
Again, what I would like to know if the neighbors would be notified by public notice or postal notice, and would they like their basement inspected before the blasting in order to be able to substantiate that if damage occurred, they could place the responsibility on the right party.
Yeah, and again, that comes in the preconditioned
It does.
survey,
It
and
all happens.
yeah, and we would, you know, there's a reasonable distance that would be within a, you know, possibility of impacting. There's always people that, you know, they could see a construction project going on and they call, but, you know, usually it gets sorted out pretty quickly because you're 5 miles away, you know, it's
Right.
very unlikely, you know, so.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good.
Thank you.
So, if the technician could bring up sheet number 5, I'll help you with the distance to the nearest structure.
I was hoping you
So on sheet 5, which is actually our soil and sedimentation control plan, so you can see right here, this is the closest structure. That's the corner of it right there. So if I take the shortest distance from here to here, it's about 117 feet. And again, all the blasting is regulated both through the town, but also through the state fire marshal's office. And there are specific criteria within certain distances of what we're required to do. I would think the blasting company, given it is a condominium association, which is a collaboration of owners, but then you have the homeowners association, would probably take the high level and do it a little bit more because of the risk of exposure to the association.
While you're on sheet 5, this is where you show the depth of water table.
So what we encountered in the borings that were done by PAR is that we encountered rock before we got to groundwater on the higher portions of the land. Down in here, as we get closer to the wetlands, it was on the order of 1 to 3 feet beneath the surface. One was as we got closer to the wetland buffer, but kind of where the pond is, it was 3 feet. And
Shallow.
shallow, but again, we meet kind of the minimum, we're well above what the minimum standard was as far as separation. The other point while I'm up here that I wanted to interject, if you go to the next sheet, sheet 6, the focal point system that is here, and to your earlier points about protection of the resource, we have opted to encase this in a permanent membrane. So there is no potential for infiltration from this treatment device into the groundwater. Again, being protective of the resource. Thanks. You're welcome.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. As a whole, that is our presentation. I would just add that as part of the project also, you can see that the proposed Lot B wouldn't have driveway access, so we would have to have an access easement that proposed Lot A would give to proposed Lot B if that needed to be a condition of approval. We're okay with that, but it would need to happen anyways as part through the development. Nobody would buy Lot B or lease it without that easement. And then finally, we just thank the board for the time. We think it's a very good project. As the planner had stated, there's not many areas in the town where you can do these types of big business commercial developments that can help assist with town infrastructure and tax and all those different things without creating a large burden. So we're very thankful for the opportunity. We thank you for all the time and for listening to all of us today. And we're still here to answer any questions that the board may have, or of the public, if they have any.
Thank you. All right, looking for a motion to open the public hearing.
Make a motion to open public hearing.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Second, those in favor? Aye. Okay. Public hearing is open at 7:57. Anyone who has any questions or comments about this project, please come up to the podium, introduce yourself.
Gary Zofsky, 88 North Main Street. I haven't been asked to be here by the proponent. I want to make that clear. I'm here because I sat in one of your chairs, I don't know, 40 years ago, and believe that each of us has a responsibility to look to the future as we approve or we consider any development. That's the primary reason that I'm here. But because I am here and I heard some of the questions, I also offer, just generally, I'd be thrilled to see a modern car wash come to town. Secondly, Doc, I drink the water. And as Mr. Thalman knows, I have the experience of having remediated, I don't know how many gasoline releases across New England. Hundreds? It's a lot. Including the Pasco circumstance that I think you referenced. I have no concerns about a service station being located here nearby the source of my water. Part of that, Doc, is because in my experience, unless there's a high volume, highly connected draw, I've never seen a groundwater transport of gasoline from a storage system extend more than about 1,200 feet. The natural systems protect us from a lot of what happens. That's why I think I testified before this board about what I think is an excess in regulation as a result, as it concerns our groundwater overlay protection district. We have a state regulator that looks at all of these things. Secondary containment of storage systems in total, not just the tanks, every pipeline, every dispenser has secondary containment today. Are they perfect? Nothing's perfect, but they work. So I have great confidence, if it is the pleasure of the board to request tertiary containment, which is what I think I heard talked about, fine. But I'm comfortable with the regulations that the DEM puts forward. All that said, I'm going to ask both the board and the proponent, the applicant, to consider a perpetual easement to the town of North Smithfield for the future opportunity of installation of a water storage tank. And you know, I hadn't seen the plan, but this area up close to the road, it'd be the area that I would target. Yeah, I know it's rock, whatever. The reason for this is that I think, as some know, over the past 3 years or more, I have been an advocate for extension of water line, this water line, down to the southern border of the town. The community is going forward with a tax increment finance study. I don't know what that's going to yield. I hope that it presents favorable data to support that concept. But just as this development needs water, if we don't change the conditions for which, where utilities exist in our town, especially on this corridor, what we have on Route 146, not speaking to 146A, Route 146, south of the intersection with 146A, will continue to deteriorate. It's awful. Except for, a couple of AAA businesses that amaze me that they can continue to do what they do. It's at great expense, but they do. And we need to do something about that as a town. And so extension of that water line we have studied, some folks from PAR actually had involvement, recognizes that the southwest corner of the Woonsocket system may not be adequate hydraulically to be able to serve a line that would extend to the southern property line of the town. We need storage capacity to be able to beef up the hydraulic conditions in that end of the system. It's my understanding that what happens when the fire pumps kick on in Dowling Village is that they pull the pressure down in the lines. And it doesn't become a negative circumstance, but it's not a good circumstance. And we need to be dealing with that. And, will it ever happen? I don't know. I hope. Will it happen in my time? I don't know. But I'm here to advocate that both think about that, because we need it in the area to be able to improve the tax base that we talked about, or that was talked about earlier, because this is the corridor that I think we can yield great resource from, not just in tax base for the town of North Smithfield, but employment opportunity for the region. So I just encourage that that be considered as an option. I mean, in subdivision circumstances of larger size, we have the ability to take land, and we could go to the point of dictating what we want. That's not this. It has to be a cooperative circumstance, and I offer specifically and limited to the circumstance of a water storage tank with related pumping equipment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zofsky. Yeah, please.
So, Mr. Zofsky brings up a great point, and I think with respect to the extension of the line, Mr. Grilli and Canton East Holdings does a huge favor for you folks, because again, as I alluded to earlier in my testimony, we're extending this water line to here. So that represents about 1,200 feet of additional water line.
Right.
Ironically, we have Taco Bell here, and adjacent to Taco Bell is the entranceway to Dowling Village, where a water line that is stubbed exists. Probably another 300 or 400 feet, you now have a loop system, and I think PAR at that point, the model helps everybody dramatically because we have a closed system. We don't have dead ends, which represent huge draws on the water system and significant pressure reductions. So right. I think we're trying, ironically, we help to correct a problem.
Right. Anyone else have any comments on that before I do? Well, I think Mr. Zofsky brought up an excellent point. We had conversations a few years ago, actually, about the need for water on Route 146. There's tremendous commercial opportunity there, and it frankly just doesn't represent the town well, right? People driving up from Providence, that's their first impression. And there's a lot of opportunity there, but water is a big problem. So I'm curious what the applicant thinks of his proposal for an easement. What would be the this or we vote on is just following
This is
up
just
to
a
the comment.
subdivision, right? Right now, we're just in subdivision.
Well, actually, it's for them, it's the entire project. So it's also the variance as well.
So we could ask about signage.
Yeah.
So Mr. Grilli is here, and I just asked him if he took any exception to the possibility of, as we move from the preliminary to the final stage of this, is the creation of an easement specific for that, and he takes no exception to that.
All right, thank you. So we'll put that on your list, your to-do list there, Mr. Carullo?
I'm sure we'll be having conversations.
Yes, okay. Great.
Move to close the public hearing.
If there are no further comments from the public, we'll take a motion.
Close the public hearing.
Have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Those in favor? Aye. Public hearing is closed at 8:07. Okay. So walk us through this.
Yeah, so,
again.
Mr. Chairman, you'll be taking 3 actions, 2 related to the zoning relief and 1 related to the development plan review. So the first item that we would need action on would be for the dimensional variance. I believe that the applicant has addressed all of the criteria, as well as you have the planning department recommendation and some findings with regard to the dimensional variance. There is a stipulation that is being suggested by the planning department that the dimensional variance be conditional upon the special use permit in the land development project. So it would be appropriate to entertain a motion from one of the board members with regard to approval or denial of the requested dimensional variance. It's a 2% deviation, I think, from the impervious lot coverage.
Right. Anyone have a motion to make on that?
I'll make a motion to grant the requested dimensional variance with the stipulations as provided by our esteemed planner.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Roll call vote. Dr. Benoit?
Yes.
Ms. Amendola?
Yes.
Mr. Menard?
Yes.
Ms. Ramos?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes.
The next action, Mr. Chairman, would be a motion on the special use permit. The attorney took the engineer through each of the special criteria that has been established under the new Water Supply Protection Overlay District. They do actually mirror most of the requirements that would have been followed anyway with regard to permitting through DEM. There is also, and I think the engineer mentioned that they submitted a soil erosion permit to the state. There's also a soil erosion permit contained in your package. I think they've addressed each and every one of the 13 criteria directly and positively. So we would entertain a motion. There is a stipulation that the special use permit is conditional upon approval of the land development project. So it would be appropriate to entertain a motion for the special use permit.
Okay. Again, we have an motion on that?
I'll make a motion to grant the requested special use permit for the proposed gas station car wash with the following stipulation, that the approval shall be contingent upon the planning board approval of the land development project, as well as the 13 stipulations provided by staff.
Okay. We have a motion to approve. We have a second.
Second.
We have a second for Ms. Ramos. Again, roll call vote. Dr.
Yes.
Benoit? Ms. Amendola?
Yes.
Mr. Menard?
Yes.
Ms. Ramos?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes.
The next action, Mr. Chairman, would be for the, now that we have the approval of the zoning relief, would be for the land development project. The planning department had recommended 5 stipulations. I think we'll be adding 2 stipulations to that set of 5 stipulations. And one would be that the developer shall provide an access easement from Lot A to the benefit of Lot B, which has been discussed. The other additional stipulation, I believe, and I'm wording this as best I can on the fly, is the gas station design shall include a tertiary container system for the UST, the underground storage tank system for the gas station. The other stipulations, I'll read them just so that the proposed development shall receive state of Rhode Island approvals, including but not limited to RIDE.PAP, RIDEM, RIPD's permit, wetlands permit, which they have the RIPD's and the wetlands permit currently, that all proposed curbs and curbing throughout the development and onto Route 146A shall comply with RIDE. Standard, which is in the plan currently, that the contaminants of, no, that shouldn't be a stipulation. Contaminated turn shall be regulated. I don't know where that stipulation, I'm sorry, that's a typo. That the proposed dumpster shall be fully enclosed and screened from view with a solid fence or chain link fence, privacy slats and vegetative screen. I believe that's currently in the landscape plan, and that the lighting for the development shall be certified dark sky compliant. I don't know
Okay.
where that stipulation
How does the
came
board
from.
feel?
I mean, that's incorrect.
Looking for a motion?
I just have one question.
Okay.
With that, it didn't come up in conversation, and it came up in conversation about the existing signage that was gonna be removed.
Oh, right.
What is the intention for drawing attention to these businesses to get people to flock in there?
If the technician could go to sheet 6. So, actually, that won't work. So right now, as Derek had indicated, the sign for the existing church is right about here. What we've done is we've moved the sign back and only to the right-hand side as you come out. So with it being a right turn in and right turn out, there's no need to kind of look.
Okay, so you're gonna go on the north side of the driveway.
It's on the north side of the driveway.
great.
Yeah, we felt that was a far better location.
And is it limited to the number of,
There are
businesses that can be
provisions
labeled
within
on
your
it.
zoning ordinance about size,
Okay.
and it's related to the use, so, yeah, there are provisions with the zoning ordinance, and we do not see any need to exceed those.
thank you.
Thanks.
That was my question.
Okay. I'm looking for a motion.
Go ahead, Doc, you've been doing good.
I'd like to give you one of you folks a chance.
Yeah.
You did so
Break
good.
you in somehow. Okay, make a motion to grant preliminary approval with the 5 stipulations stated by the planner, in addition to the adding a tertiary containment system.
Okay.
It's 4, right? 4 stipulations, because we're removing number 3.
Technically, it could be 5 because I added the
Oh.
stipulation for the
Gotcha.
Yeah,
easement for the driveway. So there are going to be
total of 6.
6 stipulations.
Okay,
That's my motion.
so we have the motion. Do we have a second?
We are also going to create a drainage easement, and not to, so Mark, in going through the process of his review, had asked, what was the rationale behind putting the lot line here? And what we tried to do, to the best of our ability, was to keep any of the
Yeah.
maintenance required for this system associated with the gas station on a separate lot, still accommodate this, and limit the amount of easements that we had to create here
Right.
to one simply from Lot B to Lot A. So while this drainage system does essentially operate independent, it does ultimately discharge to this. So we are going to create a drainage easement around this to allow for maintenance of that system.
We can amend that stipulation, to be access and drainage easement.
Thank you. So we have a motion to approve with the stipulations as written and amended. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Dr. Benoit,
Yes.
Ms. Amendola,
Yes.
Ms. Menard,
Yes.
Ms. Ramos,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay.
Doc, Doc, you should give them a little, like, veto.
Yeah.
I respect Doc.
Yeah.
All right.
He was making.
Alrighty.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Well, to go through that.
Excavating.
Thank you.
Nice, yeah.
Always gotta have something.
It's a guide.
Yeah.
Especially
Yeah. Hey, everybody should have their hobbies and things that keep them going.
Okay. All right. All right. Next item on our agenda, it's a 2023 land use legislation amendment to the North Smithfield zoning ordinance. Give us a brief introduction on that, Mr. Carullo, please.
Chairman, as the board is aware, we are slowly working our way through the General Assembly's new regulations regarding land use. Superior is here from our consultant, Innes Associates, and this evening she will be giving you a presentation on the regulations for accessory dwelling units, appeals, and the comprehensive permit. We did have a discussion, just wanted to make the board aware, about the comprehensive permit, which is to accommodate low to moderate income housing. And my suggestion initially was that we not amend the zoning ordinance to include that language and that we just follow the state statute. But based on our conversations with Rhode Island Housing, who is actually sponsoring the cost of this, their preference was to see that in our zoning code. So we're moving forward with an amendment to the zoning code to include comprehensive permitting. I want the board to be aware, however, that there's a condition on the comprehensive permit that once a community reaches its 10% goal, they're no longer required to entertain applications under the comprehensive permitting process. Currently, North Smithfield is around a little bit over 8% or 8.5%, so we got a little bit of a way to go. But that's why I didn't want to put it in there, but they want it in. So once we reach the 10%, we will not be required to follow the comprehensive permit process.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, members of the board. So we have 3 topics in front of us. I'll start with the accessory dwelling units, give you some brief highlights of that, and pause for question and answers, and then move on to the next one. So the accessory dwelling units, or the ADUs, what the statute has done it has provided a uniform definition across the state. It has set standards for ADUs, so there is a very clear objective checklist that leads to an approval or denial of an ADU. So it has use eligibility standards and use standards and dimensional standards. So ADUs for all owner-occupied properties would be allowed as of rights. ADUs would be allowed in all the zoning districts that are residential. Of course, that comes with a checklist of more eligibility criteria. And then ADUs over 2 bedrooms would be prohibited, but there are square footage requirements for ADUs that are studio or 1 bedroom that caps it at 900 square foot, and 2 bedroom that caps it at 1200 square footage. There are also, the ADUs also need to comply with all the dimensional requirements of the zoning district that it's located. And if it's an attached or in the primary residential building, it cannot actually exceed the footprint of the building. And then again, ADUs cannot be used for short-term rental, so no Airbnbs. Short-term rental is defined as any occupancy that is less than 30 days. That's pretty much what the statute language says. Any questions on that?
Well, one of the major changes under the ADU, accessory dwelling unit regulation, was prior to the current regulation, communities were allowed to have ADUs at their if they desired to have them. The General Assembly decided that they were going to impose the requirement on local communities. So it is no longer optional to address ADUs in your zoning code, and it's no longer optional to allow ADUs in your community. Now it is required. The majority of this language is dictated through the enabling legislation. We did do a few tweaks. We did look at the parking requirements, and we firmed those up, as well as I think we ran through some procedures here. So the procedures, I think we looked at those a little bit, and one of the things was that under the statute, it said that towns have the ability to waive fees with regard to ADUs and waive utility fees with regard to ADUs. We're choosing not to do that. That if someone's going to have the benefit of an ADU or have an ADU, they need to pay their permit fees and their utility fees with regard to having the ADU. So those are a couple of the changes that we had implemented into these regulations, and this is what you have, and it's fully compliant with what we're required to do at this point.
Any questions?
I mean, this is essentially allowing you to put two houses on a lot. Is that like an
Well,
oversimplification?
It's
It's a small,
I mean, 1,200 feet, 2 bedrooms, really not that small.
so
yeah.
what they used to be called were in-law apartments.
Yeah.
Right, right. you know,
And
see, it doesn't allow for-
the old standard would be, you could have an in-law apartment in your house, it couldn't exceed,
Short-term.
a certain size, you couldn't have separate utilities so that it couldn't be a rental unit, it could not have a separate means of egress, you had to have a common access to it, so it would prohibit people from renting them out.
Well, what it says is it cannot be used for short-term rental.
Right.
Well,
What's the
what-
definition of short-term rental?
I think that's related to
give the definition. Less
the
than
bed and breakfast
Let's-
type thing, or
yes.
the
Right,
the
but that-
Airbnb.
So that means you can rent it out.
You can, yes, I'm saying the standard prior to this was what we would call an in-law, and it would be a relative, and,
Yeah.
it would have all of that criteria so that you couldn't rent it out. The intent of this is for people to be able to rent out
Gotcha.
an additional dwelling unit on their property, whether it be inside the existing building or a pre-existing, and I want to pre-existing outbuilding. So if you had a detached garage, you can convert that.
Yeah.
You can't build one that's separate from your house. So if you have an existing residential property and you don't have any outbuildings, the ADU has to go inside of the existing structure.
What stops
Okay.
a potential applicant, you just put something in my brain, is that I have an outrigged two-stall garage. I'm now gonna make that into an ADU. And 6 months later, I'm gonna throw a new two-stall garage up, so now I have exactly what she was talking about, you have two dwellings.
Yeah. I'm glad you're not on the General Assembly, because that's a question that should have been asked. But so you can only have one ADU on your property combined with but if you did have a garage, you could convert that to an ADU, and nothing stops you from building another garage. I think that's your
You just wouldn't
question.
be able to build another.
I have had
But you-
experience in the past, that there is ways of using the proper language to acquire a permit to fulfill your needs.
Right, you could also build a garage, look at the garage for a
But if it-
couple of weeks, and then be like, this would make a nice ADU, right?
Yep.
Oh, sorry. I was just saying, you could build a garage, look at it, it could be a garage, and then you could fairly immediately make it not a garage. Yeah,
Right.
okay.
Did I not hear language of, it had to be pre-existing? To make the ADU?
Yes, and
Pre-existing, so if you.
But
if
pre-existing to what? Pre-existing to it being
Good point.
translated
Yeah, so
to an
there's-
ADU, or
yeah,
pre-existing to
because
this?
I understand what you're saying, and
If it's sitting there for a month, it's pretty
the statute is silent on that.
Yeah,
I would, as a practical matter, that would be I'm not saying that someone wouldn't do it, but that would be an extra expensive proposition, because now you're building a garage, you're not gonna have any, water and sewerage to your garage, and then you're gonna take that garage and you're gonna convert it, so then you're going to be applying for water and sewerage. I'm not saying it can't happen, or that it wouldn't happen. I mean, someone could build a house with a garage, and I could go buy that house, new house with a garage, and then convert that garage to an ADU, if that was my desire to do that. But, and to answer your question, yeah, it is, where the state, the General Assembly is now allowing people to put 2 dwelling units on their property, if that's the property owner's desire. And and a lot of it is, we all understand there's a housing issue and housing crisis, and, that's what this is being presented as, one of many solutions to, a housing crisis, so that someone can, I guess the thought is, if you do an ADU, it's likely that you wouldn't be renting it out to just any person, that maybe it would be a family member or a child or an older parent or something like that. But you could also have a speculator come in and buy a house and convert a garage to an ADU and have 2 units on it and rent them out.
Yep.
Mr. Carrillo, would it be possible to construct a separate standing additional dwelling on a lot and then condo the property into 2 different ownerships?
So that's a legal question, but I know the answer to the question, yes. Yes, so if you had a property, if you had an older property, for example, that, predated zoning, and there were 2 houses on a lot, and there are some of those conditions here in North Smithfield, as there are throughout the state. If you were to get that property, it's called a limited land condo, so you could use the land as the common area in each unit separately, or you could designate an area around the buildings as limited condos, and in order to do a condo, you just need a common area, whatever that's going to be. It could be the driveway, it could be the lot, the units could be individual, but yes, you can virtually condo anything.
Okay. Anything?
Yeah, just another clarifying question. It doesn't have to be owner occupied? Am I reading that "or" correctly? It needs to be an owner-occupied property as a reasonable accommodation for family with disabilities, or on a lot with a total area of 20,000 square feet for which the primary use is residential?
Yeah, so it's a basically 20,000 square foot lot.
But in that case, it could be 2 rental units on one
Yes,
20,000
that's
square
correct.
foot.
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
You're reading it correctly.
If it's an owner-occupied property, then the ADU would be by right, but if it's not, then
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Should we move on to the next? No?
I guess just a fundamental question. What is the benefit of codifying this at the town level versus deferring to the state? Because we don't really have a choice either way, right?
That's correct.
So what is the pro and con of leaving it alone versus the recommendation to amend
Well,
our ordinance?
well, a couple of things on this particular one is, we're addressing the parking situation. We're requiring to have additional parking.
Oh, so there's some leeway at the town level.
Well, so basically what it says, you can't require them to have more than, I think it was 1 space for any ADU that's 2 bedrooms or less. So what we're saying is, if you have an ADU with more than 2 bedrooms, we're requiring you to have additional space. The other condition, I think, was, as far as the waiving of utility fees and permit fees, we're not waiving that, we're doing that. So, I mean, community has a responsibility as an entity to create zoning laws, comprehensive planning, zoning laws, and subdivision laws that govern the community. Prior to this legislation, there was a lot more leeway. As the state has become stricter and is dictating more to local communities, because They believe that local communities have been resistant to providing housing. That's really what, the statements are. If you're going to have a zoning ordinance, then you should be addressing what you need to address in the zoning ordinance. This is a requirement of the zoning ordinance. The LMI is only, when I mention that, is only a requirement of your zoning ordinance if you have less than 10% affordable, or if your community is not exempt from affordable. There are certain communities like Warwick and West Warwick and other communities that have high rental, high apartments. They're exempt from the affordable. North Smithfield isn't. But that one is a either or. Either you have 10% or you have to allow this. This is actually mandated by the state. We could sit back and not update our zoning ordinance at all, and then we would just be relying on the statutes, and we'd have no zoning. So when you're updating your zoning ordinance, where you do have, and Gary's actually been involved in some of this, where there are options within the General Assembly's legislation, we are exercising our prerogative to determine what we believe is the best option for the town of North Smithfield.
Yeah, thank you.
I have a question on because it came up that you can have more than 2 bedrooms, does that change the square footage requirements?
You can't have an ADU with more than 2 bedrooms, it's prohibited.
Oh, okay, so it is a
Yeah.
limit of 2 bedrooms.
Yes,
Okay,
it's studio 1 and 2 bedrooms.
thank you.
And going to your prior question, there's a lot of language in all of these new statutes that's coming up, and a lot of times they have set minimums of the things that are required to be done, but the town can customize a lot of language to what it needs. So that's why it needs to be tweaked and added into the zoning ordinance.
Right, okay. Okay, why don't we move on to, what is it? The LMI
Comprehensive-
housing?
yeah, Comprehensive permit.
Yes.
So, again, we were 2% away from, Mark, I'm moving on to comprehensive permit. So we were 2% away from not requiring this to be added in the zoning ordinance at all, but we kind of have to. So this process kicks in when the proposal has at least 25% of the housing that is LMI. So at that stage, it provides expanded incentives for affordable housing and multifamily housing, including density bonuses, and I'll come to that in a little bit. A lot of more things that this process does is that it's trying to phase out the state housing appeals board, and what it's trying to do is that appeals from the local review will go directly to the Superior Court, and then the Superior Court would have a different land use calendar. So all of these applications can be processed quicker through the courts. And I'm just going to touch a little bit on the application process steps. So this has a required pre-application process, which can be waived by the planning board if so desired. The stage after that is the preliminary plan review, which requires a single application to the planning board, and at that stage, we need a public hearing and a review. The next step is the final plan, which can be approved administratively. So the town is required to provide density bonuses. So density bonuses comes at different caps. So at 25%, you get a certain amount of density bonuses, and it goes to 30, 50, 100. So as much LMI housing you're providing in the proposed project, these density bonuses are required to be provided. And the moratoriums do apply to the multifamily housing, but do not apply to any projects that come through the comprehensive permit. Again, we are 2% away, so once we reach that, this process would not be in use.
Mr. Chairman, one of the changes that we made to this comp permit process, and it was as a result of our experience with the Pines as well as the experience with the planning board, was to require the pre-submission. That was optional in the statute. It's optional. We've eliminated that and made it mandatory unless the board waives it, which I really don't speculate happening.
The applicants prefer it, we prefer it.
Yeah, so it was optional. It's
But
no.
it makes it's a little more streamlined than master plan.
Yeah.
So it's good.
Yeah, so it's following the lead of the board, we've made that mandatory rather than optional.
Right. Okay.
Any questions?
Question for Mr. Caruso. When the town reaches its 10%, do all units, in order to count to the 10%, have to have their occupancy permit in hand?
Yes,
As
they-
opposed to being under construction?
Yes, they do. As a matter of fact, not only have the occupancy permit, but they have to be occupied. They have to be under the supervision of a,
An overseer?
Yes.
monitoring agent.
they have
Thank
to
you,
make
Bobby.
sure that the-
Overseer, monitoring
You have
agent.
to make sure the income levels are correct.
Yeah, so,
and
so
all that
the,
kind of
so,
stuff.
and they're deed restricted for a minimum of 30 years, I think.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions?
No.
Okay, so the next on the docket is the subdivision regulations appeals.
Mhm.
This section basically broadens the authority of the administrative officer, and I believe in this conversation that will be Mark. So there's two ways the appeals goes. Any decision that is taken by an administrative officer can be appealed through the Board of Appeals, and then if the decision the Board of Appeals decision needs to be appealed, that goes to the Superior Court. The second track is any decisions by the Planning Board go directly to the Superior Court. That's basically what the appeal section says.
Right. And that's really because it's not going to the zoning board now, right?
Yes.
That's really just,
Yes,
yeah.
it's just streamlining everything.
Yeah.
That's,
Who
any
makes up the
question?
Board of Appeals?
Sorry,
The Board of Appeals, what is that made up of?
I am going to defer that question to Mark.
The Board of Appeals for any decision I make
Right,
would be the planning board.
okay, that's, I thought there was, I was just clarifying.
So what used to happen was if the planning board approved or denied a project, the appeal of that decision was to the zoning board, and then the appeal of that decision was the Superior Court. So what this statute is doing is it's eliminating basically the zoning board from being the Board of Appeal.
if we deny someone.
So any decision that I make gets appealed, and then that decision goes directly to the Superior Court. So it basically eliminates the zoning board as the Board of Appeal. We were trying to to be honest with you, we were trying to retrofit this into the appeal section of the development review regulations, and it wasn't working well at all. So we decided we're just going to take the old section out and replace it with this section, which is directly out of the enabling legislation, because it's clearer.
One more question, if I may?
Yes.
You may not have an answer.
Mhm.
Should we foresee that the legislature is going to increase that 10% requirement?
I really don't have
Want me to
the
answer that for you,
Yes.
Doc? I would think they probably will.
I would be in agreement.
Then it's actually good to have the comprehensive permit already in the ordinance. Any further questions?
None here.
Nope.
Okay.
Nope. We're good.
Make the motion.
Are we done?
Yeah, so the action of the planning board is, in this instance, is not to approve or reject. It's to make a recommendation to the town council. And what we're doing, as you're aware, is we're incrementally, as these sections are being rewritten, we're bringing them to the board in smaller chunks rather than bringing you a whole zoning ordinance. And so we're getting recommendations to the town council for the amendments as we're moving along. At the end, you will be able to look at the comprehensive rewrite of the zoning ordinance, and that is what we'll be presenting to the council at the appropriate time. We're not, we've been falling, the consultant's been doing their work, staff has been falling behind because of workload, so we keep adjusting the calendar, but we are working as diligently as we can. But the motion tonight would be to make a positive recommendation to the town council with regard to these three sections.
I'd make a motion for these motions to be presented to the town council for approval.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Dr. Benoit,
Yes.
Ms. Amendola,
Yes.
Mr. Menard,
Yes.
Ms. Ramos,
Yes.
chair votes yes.
Thank you.
And with that, seeing as how there are no administrative subdivisions, we have only one topic left, which somehow we skipped items 11, 12, and 13. But
13's unlucky.
Yeah, exactly, let's keep that one
it's
right
the
on.
number I wore in baseball.
Motion to adjourn?
Are you asking or telling?
She's making a motion.
Making a motion.
Very silently.
Do we
Motion
have
to
a,
adjourn?
do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
No opposed. The meeting is closed at 8:41.